The galaxy's fiercest beasts trust only humans with their young, top HFY stories. In the farthest reaches of the galaxy, where the stars flickered like distant jewels and unknown worlds spun in silence, there existed a species so dangerous, so terrifying, that even the most advanced civilizations feared them. These were the Karzak, beasts of unimaginable strength, with razor-sharp claws, dense armored hides, and instincts honed through millennia of survival in the wildest, most hostile environments. Their roars could shake mountains, and their gaze could freeze lesser creatures in terror. Despite their fearsome reputation, there was one thing that set the Karzak apart from other predatory species. They were deeply protective of their young, more than any species in the galaxy. Perhaps, in the wilds of their homeworld, they raised their cubs with a fierceness that matched their own primal might. But there was a secret, one known only to a handful of species in the galaxy. The Karzak trusted only one species to care for their young when they were forced to leave them behind in times of peril or conflict. And that species was humans. This unlikely alliance had begun many years ago when the Karzak's homeworld, X-Wing Kra, was invaded by a coalition of alien species. The Karzak, though fierce in battle, found themselves outnumbered and overwhelmed. They had long been solitary creatures, with few allies, and the idea of entrusting their young to another species seemed an impossible choice. But in their desperation, they turned to the humans. It had all started with a chance encounter on a remote moon, where a group of Karzak cubs had been left behind after a battle. The Karzak warriors, fighting to protect their territory, could not risk returning to retrieve their young. The humans, part of an exploration and peacekeeping team, had stumbled upon the cubs while investigating the aftermath of the battle. The sight was one of stark contrast. The cubs were small, covered in thick, spiny fur, their large eyes filled with confusion and terror. They hissed and growled, instinctively defensive against the unfamiliar humans. But the humans, trained in diplomacy and with deep empathy for all life, approached them with caution. They didn't reach for weapons. Instead, they offered food, warmth, and, above all, safety. Commander Liana West, the leader of the human team, took the first step. She knelt in front of the cubs, her hands open in a gesture of peace. "We won't harm you," she whispered, her voice calm, reassuring. For a moment, nothing happened. The cubs stared at her with wide, wary eyes. Then, one of the smallest cubs took a tentative step forward, drawn to the food in her hand. Liana smiled softly and handed it over. That was all it took. In the days that followed, the humans cared for the cubs, feeding them, protecting them, and earning their trust. The bond that formed was immediate and profound. The cubs, once fierce and wild, began to relax in the presence of the humans, their natural instincts for survival finding comfort in the care and protection offered by their unlikely guardians. As the humans continued to nurture the cubs, something incredible happened. The Karzak warriors, observing from the shadows, watched as the humans interacted with their offspring. What they saw was not weakness, but strength, a strength forged in kindness and a deep respect for life. The humans treated the cubs with care, offering them protection from the dangers of the world while never encroaching on their independence. The Karzak saw that the humans understood the importance of the young, and that their respect for life extended beyond their own kind. When the Karzak returned to reclaim their cubs, they were surprised to find them not only unharmed but thriving. The humans had, in their own way, proven their worthiness. The Karzak knew they could not repay the debt of trust they had placed in the humans, but they understood that this bond, this rare alliance, was worth preserving. And so it began, the understanding that humans would always be trusted with the Karzak young. Years passed, and the relationship deepened. The Karzak, while still fiercely independent, began to view humans as more than just a species of caretakers. They began to see them as allies, partners who shared a bond of mutual respect, understanding, and strength. They began to approach humanity for help during times of crisis, whether it was to protect their young from other predators or to ensure the survival of their kind in the face of environmental disaster. In return, the humans respected the Karzak as a species that valued strength, survival, and loyalty. They learned from the Karzak how to navigate dangerous environments, how to fight with precision and power, and how to never underestimate the will to survive. But the most profound aspect of the alliance was this: when the Karzak warriors went into battle. When they were forced to leave their young behind, they knew without hesitation that their cubs were in safe hands. The humans, with their innate compassion and wisdom, had become the guardians of Karzak's future. It was on one such occasion that the true depth of this bond was revealed. A Karzak warlord named Thakare, one of the fiercest and most respected leaders among his people, was forced to leave his cubs behind as he led his warriors into an ancient battle for dominance. The humans took in the cubs, as they had so many times before, caring for them while the warlord fought to protect his people. When the battle was won, Thakare returned, exhausted but triumphant. His cubs were safe, healthy, and waiting for him. As he approached them, one of his cubs, a small female named Arakar, rushed forward and pressed her head against his massive chest in greeting. The Karzak warlord looked down at the human caretakers standing nearby, Commander Liana West among them, and offered a rare gesture of respect. "Your strength, your care, it is unmatched," Thakare said in a low, rumbling voice. "You have earned the trust of my people. We will never forget what you have done for us." Liana smiled, her eyes softening with pride. "It is not just about trust, Thakare. It is about partnership. You and your kind have shown us what it means to fight for survival. We will always be there for you, just as you've been there for us." And with that, the humans and the Karzak, two species so different in form and nature, stood united. The Karzak had come to trust only one species with their young, the humans, and in return, humanity had earned the respect and loyalty of the galaxy's fiercest and most savage beasts. The bond between the two species became legendary, and as the years passed, other races came to Earth and to the Karzak's homeworld to witness the alliance firsthand. They saw the Karzak cubs playing peacefully alongside the humans, their once feared protectors standing side by side with their unexpected guardians. It was a symbol of strength, compassion, and the unbreakable bond forged between two species willing to look past their differences and stand together. In the end, the Karzak were no longer just feared for their might. They were respected for the trust they placed in humanity, and for the rare gift they had given the galaxy, the knowledge that true strength lies not in dominance, but in the willingness to protect and care for those who matter most. End of story. The galaxy's fiercest beasts trust only humans with their young, Part 2. The bond between humans and the Karzak had become a symbol of unity in a galaxy otherwise defined by competition and warfare. The story of how humans had gained the trust of the galaxy's fiercest beasts spread far and wide. It wasn't just a tale of survival, but one of understanding, mutual respect, and strength forged in unlikely circumstances. While the Karzak had long been a solitary and warrior-driven species, their trust in humanity had changed the way they approached both their young and their alliances. Over time, the bond between the two species deepened, evolving into something far beyond mere caretaking. Humans weren't just protectors of the Karzak's future. They had become crucial partners in maintaining the delicate balance of power across the galaxy. It was not long before other species took note of the unique relationship between humanity and the Karzak. Those who had once viewed humans as naive or unremarkable began to question their assumptions. How could a species so young and seemingly fragile have earned the trust of such powerful and dangerous creatures? The answer, it seemed, was simple. Humans had the one thing that the Karzak valued above all else: unshakable strength in spirit. This realization would come to a head during a pivotal moment in galactic history, when the balance of power between the major factions was threatened by a rising military empire known as the Tsar Dominion. The Tsar, a race of brutal conquerors with an insatiable appetite for territory, had begun their relentless expansion through the galaxy, overwhelming weaker civilizations with their superior military technology. Many species were already falling under the weight of the Tsar's aggression. As the Dominion's forces spread, a message reached Earth, an urgent plea from the Karzak warlord Thakare. The Tsar had targeted HFY, the Karzak homeworld, and their forces were rapidly advancing. Thakare, knowing the importance of his people's survival and their sacred bond with humanity, sent an unprecedented request to the Human Council. Could they, once again, help protect his people's future by watching over the Karzak cubs while the warriors prepared to defend their land? The stakes had never been higher. The Tsar's conquest was brutal, and their empire was known for showing no mercy. But the Karzak, despite their warrior prowess, needed help to ensure the survival of their next generation. This time, it wasn't just a matter of watching over cubs. It was a question of survival for an entire species. Commander Liana West, who had been a part of the initial alliance, was called to lead the mission. She knew the gravity of the situation. She wasn't just protecting the Karzak's young, she was safeguarding the very future of a proud, ancient species. In the dead of night, the humans arrived on HFY, their ship touching down amidst the jagged terrain of the Karzak's mountainous homeworld. As the humans disembarked, they were greeted by Thackeray, who stood tall and imposing, his thick fur rippling in the wind. But there was something different in his eyes now, something more than just the fierceness of a warrior. It was the weight of responsibility, the knowledge that his species could not afford to fail. "We have no choice but to fight, Commander West," Thackeray said solemnly. "But I trust you to protect them while we are gone. Keep them safe, as you have done before." Liana nodded, her expression steady. "We will. You don't have to worry about your young. They'll be in good hands." And so, as the Karzak warriors prepared to defend their homeland, it was the humans who were tasked with the most precious responsibility, ensuring that the future of the Karzak remained intact. The human team quickly set up a fortified camp in the heart of the Karzak's territories, a place where the cubs could be kept safe from the enemy's reach. But this time, the threat was far greater than anything the humans had faced before. The Tsar, upon learning of the alliance between the humans and the Karzak, saw an opportunity to break the Karzak's spirit. They sent waves of soldiers to infiltrate and destroy the camp, hoping to target the most vulnerable link in the Karzak defense, their young. For weeks, the humans held their ground, fending off the Tsar's attempts to infiltrate their camp. The Karzak cubs, though frightened, found comfort in the humans' presence. Commander Liana and her team moved with precise coordination, setting traps, fortifying their defenses, and ensuring the safety of the cubs at all costs. But even the most experienced soldiers were tested when the Tsar launched their final assault, a full-scale attack designed to overwhelm the human defenses and force them into retreat. The Tsar forces were massive, their weaponry far superior to that of the humans. It seemed like all hope was lost. Yet, in the face of impossible odds, humanity's resilience shone through. Liana and her team made a final stand, using every trick they had learned from their Karzak allies. They lured the Tsar forces into a trap, using the rugged terrain to their advantage. The Karzak cubs, under human protection, were safely hidden in the depths of the camp, surrounded by layers of defense. In the final moments of the battle, as the Tsar closed in, the Karzak warriors arrived, having fought their way through the Dominion's forces. With the Karzak's might joining the fray, the tide of battle turned. The Tsar were forced into retreat, their forces scattered and broken. Thackeray, standing victorious, saw the humans standing tall beside his cubs, protecting them even as the battlefield raged around them. He knew then that humanity was more than just caretakers of his young, they were protectors of his species' future, and they had proven that their strength, their will to fight, and their loyalty could never be underestimated. "You have done more than I could have ever asked, Commander West," Thackeray said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your strength is not just in your weapons, but in your spirit. You have proven yourselves to be more than allies." Liana nodded, her eyes scanning the battlefield. "We protect what matters, and your young matter, Thackeray." As the Karzak celebrated their hard-earned victory, the alliance between humanity and the Karzak was cemented forever. The Tsar had underestimated the power of a species united by more than just the desire for conquest. The humans had not only saved the Karzak cubs but had demonstrated to the galaxy the true meaning of strength, the ability to fight not just for oneself, but for others, especially those who could not fight for themselves. And in that moment, the galaxy saw something truly remarkable. The Karzak, the fiercest beasts in the galaxy, trusted only humans with their young, because humanity had proven that, in the face of danger, their strength, courage, and compassion were unmatched. End of story. The galaxy's fiercest beasts trust only humans with their young, Part 3. The Karzak warlord Thackeray's gratitude for humanity's role in his people's survival was deeply felt, but the bond between humans and the Karzak stretched beyond mere words of thanks. It became an unspoken truth across the galaxy. The Karzak trusted only humans with their young. As the alliance between the two species grew stronger, humanity began to understand just how monumental this responsibility was. After the Tsar Dominion was driven from Karzak's homeworld, a wave of peace followed. For the first time in centuries, the Karzak were not engaged in warfare. They could turn their focus inward, rebuild their society, and ensure the survival of their species. But there was still one lingering question that had been on humanity's mind since the first days of their alliance with the Karzak. Why us? Why had the Karzak, fierce and proud as they were, trusted their young, their future, to humans? Of all species? It wasn't as if the Karzak were unacquainted with other species. They had dealt with traders, explorers, and conquerors over the years. Yet, in the most critical moment, they chose humans, not just as allies, but as guardians of their children. The answer came unexpectedly during a joint human-Karzak expedition to a far-flung planet, a place rich in minerals but surrounded by unstable, deadly weather patterns. The planet had long been off-limits to most species, including the Karzak, because of its dangerous and unpredictable environment. However, a rare resource on the planet could be the key to ensuring the Karzak's long-term survival, especially after their near-death encounter with the Tsar. Liana West, now a revered figure among both humans and Karzak alike, was leading the expedition, working alongside Thackeray and his warriors to extract the precious minerals. The planet's harsh conditions made the mission incredibly difficult. Savage storms and fluctuating magnetic fields played havoc with technology, and the wild creatures that roamed the surface were as deadly as the Karzak themselves. As they made camp on the planet, it was clear that the Karzak warriors were uneasy, not because of the environment or the mission itself, but because their young were accompanying them. A few cubs, now a little older, had been brought along to witness their first journey beyond HFY, a rare and momentous occasion for Karzak youth. The humans, understanding the immense importance of this event, kept their distance but were always close at hand to assist. They took turns watching the cubs, ensuring that they were safe and comfortable amidst the chaos of their surroundings. One night, as a storm raged across the desolate surface of the planet, the humans noticed something unusual. One of the younger Karzak cubs, a small male named Rook, had wandered off in the middle of the night, drawn to the wild sounds of the storm. He was fearless, much like his parents, and determined to see the world for himself. The Karzak parents, of course, had immediately noticed his disappearance and had begun a frantic search through the camp. But it was Liana who spotted him first. Alone and terrified, caught in the eye of the storm, she knew the risks facing a Karzak cub in the wild could be dangerous, even for an experienced human. But this was more than just a cub's wayward adventure. It was a test of the trust the Karzak had placed in humanity. Without hesitation, Liana grabbed a handful of emergency gear and dashed into the storm. Through the howling winds and deafening thunder, she found Rook, crouching against the fury of the storm, his wide, glowing eyes locked onto hers, a mix of fear and curiosity in them. "Rook," she shouted over the din of the storm, her voice firm but not unkind. "It's okay. I'm here. Let's get you back to the others." The cub hesitated for a moment, then let out a low growl, the natural instinct to challenge any perceived threat rising within him. But something in Liana's steady presence, her unwavering calm, made him pause. Slowly, he lowered his head and allowed her to approach. With a sense of careful understanding, Liana carefully hoisted him onto her shoulder and made her way back to the camp. When they returned, the Karzak warriors were waiting, their expressions a mix of relief and awe. Thackeray, who had been leading the search for his son, approached Liana. He said nothing for a long moment, simply regarding her with his intense gaze. Then, in his deep voice, he spoke. "You saved him," Thackeray said, the weight of his words settling over them like the calm after a storm. "He was lost in the fury of the world, but you found him. You are more than just caretakers of our young. You are their guardians." Liana set Rook down gently and met Thackeray's gaze. "It's what we do," she said simply. "We protect." And in that moment, the true meaning of their alliance became clear. The Karzak trusted humans with their young because humans were not only capable of protecting the cubs, they had proven, time and again, that they could protect life even in the most chaotic and dangerous environments. They could face the storm, both literally and figuratively, and come out stronger on the other side. The next day, When the storm had cleared, Thackeray gathered his warriors and their young. "You have shown us what it means to be strong," he said to the humans. "We have never trusted another species with our future as we trust you." And so, the legend grew. Across the galaxy, the story of how the humans had earned the trust of the galaxy's most savage beasts became a symbol of what it meant to protect, to fight for something greater than oneself. It was a bond forged in the crucible of danger, a bond built on respect, loyalty, and the shared understanding that true strength comes from caring for those who cannot care for themselves. As the humans and Karzak continued their exploration of the galaxy, side by side, their alliance became an unbreakable force. No longer were they just two species coexisting, they had become one, intertwined by their shared values and a deep, unwavering trust. And the galaxy, watching from afar, began to understand something fundamental. The fiercest of beasts had chosen humanity to be the guardians of their future. And in the years to come, when other species looked to Earth for answers, they didn't just see a young species struggling for survival, they saw a species that had earned its place among the stars, a species that had proven that true power came not from domination, but from protecting those who mattered most. End of story. The galaxy's fiercest beasts trust only humans with their young, Part 4. The Karzak and humanity's bond continued to evolve, becoming more intricate and far-reaching as the years passed. What started as a mutual agreement to protect the Karzak young had transformed into an unbreakable alliance. The galaxy, now observing the partnership between humanity and the Karzak, saw something that had never been witnessed before, a species of fierce warriors entrusting their future to a race that was, by all accounts, much younger and less battle-hardened than most. The consequences of this trust reverberated far beyond their own alliance. The Karzak's enemies, once undeterred by the thought of facing humanity in battle, now knew better. The Dominion's remnant forces, scattered and reeling from their previous defeats, had regrouped and started planning their revenge. But they no longer underestimated the humans, nor their unique bond with the Karzak. Commander Liana West had become more than just a leader of human forces. She was now a symbol of strength, the embodiment of humanity's ability to stand against impossible odds. Her role as protector and guardian of the Karzak cubs had made her one of the most respected figures in both the human and Karzak worlds. Her once small team had now grown into an elite unit, a diverse force made up of humans, Karzak warriors, and even other allies who had pledged their support to the cause. Among the new members of Liana's team was Akaris, a young Tsar warrior who had defected after witnessing the brutality of his own people during the war. He had been captured by the Karzak in a skirmish and, after realizing the power of their alliance, chose to surrender and offer his help in exchange for asylum. It was a move that many of his fellow Tsar would later come to regret, as Akaris' knowledge of Tsar tactics and strategy was invaluable. In the months following the Great Battle on HFY, tensions between the Karzak and the Tsar remained high. The Tsar sought to reclaim their lost territories, and rumors circulated that they had developed a new, more dangerous weapon capable of turning the tide in their favor. The humans, knowing that the Karzak's young were the key to their future, also understood that they had to act quickly to protect not only the cubs but their way of life. One day, a troubling message arrived. A group of Karzak scouts, who had ventured into neutral space to gather information on the Tsar, sent word of a devastating discovery. The Tsar had begun experimenting with biological weapons, mutations of their own species designed to enhance their already formidable strength. But it wasn't just the Tsar they were planning to unleash this weapon on. They were targeting the Karzak cubs, seeking to create a new breed of soldiers that could potentially replace the need for the Karzak savage warriors. The mission was clear. The humans and the Karzak needed to work together to stop this new Tsar threat before it could come to fruition. Liana, accompanied by Thackeray and a small but capable team, traveled to the planet where the Tsar were rumored to be conducting their experiments. The planet was isolated, a forgotten world in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, hidden away from the watchful eyes of the larger galactic community. It was there, in a facility buried deep beneath the surface, that the Tsar were conducting their sinister experiments. Upon arrival, the team infiltrated the facility, their mission clear: sabotage the genetic experiments, rescue any Karzak cubs that might have been captured, and prevent the Tsar from creating the monstrous soldiers they intended to use against the galaxy. As they descended into the heart of the base, Liana's team discovered horrifying evidence of the Tsar's work. Tanks filled with mutated creatures lined the walls, beasts that had once been Karzak cubs, now twisted and malformed into weapons of war. Some still had the familiar Karzak features, but their eyes glowed with a strange, unnatural intensity. They were the result of an experiment gone wrong, a reminder of what the Tsar were willing to sacrifice for their goals. Liana and Thackeray exchanged a grim look, their resolve hardening. They knew that this wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle to ensure that no other species would ever have to endure what the Karzak had suffered. The mission quickly escalated into a full-scale assault. The Karzak warriors fought alongside humans, their natural savagery perfectly complementing the humans' strategic precision. Together, they tore through the facility, rescuing cubs and fighting off the Tsar soldiers who had been deployed to guard the experiments. In the final chamber, Liana and Thackeray faced the mastermind behind the horrific experiments, a high-ranking Tsar geneticist named Zorith. The Tsar, realizing the magnitude of the situation, attempted to flee, but Liana blocked his escape. "You've gone too far," Liana said, her voice calm but filled with determination. "You will answer for what you've done." Zorith sneered. "You think you can stop us? We will not be stopped. The Tsar will have an army of your precious Karzak, and we will use them to crush you all." Thackeray, hearing the words of the Tsar, stepped forward, his voice booming with fury. "You have created abominations, monsters that are no longer Karzak. They are nothing but weapons to you, but I will not allow you to desecrate our future any longer." With that, the final battle commenced. In a blur of motion, the Karzak warriors clashed with the Tsar soldiers, their claws and teeth rending through their enemies. Liana, always calm under pressure, focused on Zorith. She was determined to ensure that he would never harm anyone again. The fight was brutal, but in the end, the Tsar scientist was captured. After the battle, as the facility collapsed around them, the Karzak cubs who had been saved were brought forward. They were shaken, their eyes wide with confusion, but they were alive, and in the hands of the humans, they would be given a chance to grow and thrive. Thackeray, bloodied but unbowed, turned to Liana once more. "Once again, you have proven that we made the right choice in trusting you. You didn't just save our cubs, you saved our future." Liana nodded. "It's not just about saving lives, Thackeray. It's about ensuring that no one is ever forced to face a future without hope." As the team prepared to leave the Tsar facility behind, a quiet understanding passed between the Karzak and their human allies. The battle had been won, but the war for their future had only just begun, and they would face it together, as partners, as guardians, and as friends. The galaxy would soon learn that the fiercest beasts in the universe had chosen humanity as their allies, and the bond between the two species would stand as a testament to the strength that comes not from destruction, but from the courage to protect those who cannot protect themselves. End of story.